Welcome to Salacious TV, where we share some of the most salacious stories on the internet. Before we get into today's story, we humbly ask that you would like this video and subscribe to our channel. It doesn't cost you anything, but it really helps us out.
Heading home that night, he felt a mix of emotions. He had enjoyed being with Kathy despite his feelings of guilt and the fact she was old enough to be his mother. But after all she had been through, he was happy that she found someone to love her. He wished he could do the same. For the next couple of weeks, Dean threw himself into his work, trying hard not to think about Kathy or Angie. Then one afternoon things took an unexpected turn. Taylor had contacted him to discuss the possibility of him taking over their account. It had the potential to be a very lucrative contract, and he went along to meet the owner, Sam Taylor. Introducing himself to the receptionist, he was shown into a small meeting room. The young lady had made him a cup of coffee, and he had just sat down to wait when the door opened and a gorgeous woman walked in.
Mr. Gardner, I'm Samantha Taylor.
Guessing her to be in her mid to late 20s, he estimated she was around 5 foot 4 inches tall. She had dark hair that hung just below her shoulders, beautiful brown eyes, and a gorgeous face. Oh, I thought Sam was
A man. Don't worry, that happens a lot. You thought you were going to meet my dad. He's Sam while I'm Samantha. He's taking more of a backseat these days while I run the day-to-day stuff.
I see. So, I'll be negotiating the contract with you.
Will that be a problem?
Absolutely not. For the remainder of the hour that they spent discussing the proposal and potential contract, Dean struggled to keep his attention focused on the business in hand, and not on the attractive woman sitting across from him. I think that just about wraps it up.
Dean, I'm happy with what you're recommending as well as the price. Once we have it all on paper and the lawyers look it over, we can get it signed and you can get started.
Really?
Yes, really. Now, all we have to decide is where you're taking me to dinner.
His mouth opened and closed, but nothing came out.
You were going to ask me to dinner, weren't you?
Of course.
Good. I'll text you my address and you can pick me up at 7.
Dean called his office and told Kathy that he was taking the rest of the day off. He hadn't been looking to date anyone, especially not a new customer, but she clearly had set her sights on him. The rest of the afternoon passed him by in a complete blur, and without realizing how he did it, he found himself, dressed, knocking at the door of Samantha Taylor's townhouse at a couple of minutes before 7 that evening.
Right on time.
She was wearing a little red dress that clung to her curvaceous figure. The neckline exposed just the right amount of cleavage to be tempting without appearing slutty.
Dean.
What? Sorry, you look amazing.
Thank you. So where are we going?
To a little Italian restaurant I like. I hope that's okay.
It sounds perfect.
The food was delicious, and Dean found himself enjoying her company. So much so that thoughts of Angie were again pushed aside. Dropping her off at her home a couple of hours later, Samantha unfastened her seatbelt and leaned across to kiss his cheek.
I hope we can do this again sometime.
I'd like that. He leaned in to return her kiss. She smelled amazing. She looked amazing. He wanted more, but he respectfully pulled away and walked Samantha to her door. He wasn't looking for any sort of relationship. However, he did call Samantha after a few days and arranged to have dinner with her again that coming Saturday. Their second date went even better than a first, and Dean again found himself able to ignore his feelings for his ex-wife, even when she came up as the topic of conversation.
So, how come you're single? I would have expected a man like you to have been someone's husband by now.
I was married. I've been divorced for over a year now.
Oh, what happened? If you don't mind me asking.
Dean thought about it for a moment. He was usually reluctant to tell the story to people he barely knew. She cheated on me with her boss. I found out and, well, that's about it.
Stupid girl if you ask me. And now, what are your plans for the future?
None really. Just grow the business and enjoy what little free time I have.
No girlfriend or anything?
I'm not sure I'm ready for another relationship. She seemed to accept his answers for the moment, and still eyeing him like he was her prey, she finished her coffee.
Shall we go?
Sure. They left the restaurant so he could drive her home. When they arrived at Samantha's house, she asked,
Would you like to come in?
Are you sure?
Yes, I'm very sure.
Following his date into the house, Dean couldn't help but admire her femininity and wondered exactly what she had planned for him.
Would you like another cup of coffee, or we could have it later, like maybe?
She was clearly proposing that they sleep together, and it took him a little by surprise. I suppose we. She pulled his lips to hers, interrupting his response. Her fingers sliding through his hair, stroking his face and neck, while she pressed her firm body against him.
Good, because I want you right now.
Unable to resist, he slipped his own arms around her, pulling her back against him, taking his turn to kiss her. For several long seconds they melted into each other, while her hands held his face to keep his lips pressed to hers.
Shall we take this upstairs?
Sure. Lead the way. She led him towards the stairs. Once in the bedroom they hurriedly undressed each other. His fingers starting to tug down the zipper on her dress while hers fumbled at his shirt buttons before reaching for his trousers. Finally, after he had peeled away all of her garments, he led her to the bed. They kissed as their bodies melted into one. The room began to spin for Dean as the two of them began to climb the mountain top. They arrived. They enjoyed each other. And they arrived again. Afterwards, as they lay there, holding each other drifting off to sleep, Dean wondered what he might be getting himself into with Samantha. They enjoyed each other again the following morning. This time it was slower, more sensual, and Dean took her to the mountain top twice. After a late breakfast and a shower, he managed to free himself from her clutches despite her begging him to stay. He promised to call her later that day, and as he drove home, he thought about the girl he had just left. Their 2 dates, the mountaintop experiences, last night and then again that morning, had all been enjoyable and needed since Kathy broke things off with him. However, he had mixed feelings regarding Samantha's intensity. It had only been their 2nd date, and yet she dragged him to her bed. And then that morning, her insistence that he spend the day with her had been too much too fast. She clearly wanted something more than just a casual fling, and he wasn't certain that he could provide it. For the next 3 months he tried to keep things relaxed and fairly low-key with Samantha while she, on the other hand, pushed him for more and more commitment. First she insisted they were exclusive. Not that he minded that. Then she suggested he leave a spare toothbrush and some clothes at her house. No sooner than he agreed to that, she wanted to do the same at his small flat. Then it was the weekends. Samantha wanting the two of them to spend them together, from Friday to Monday, being a couple and doing whatever it is that couples do. When she wasn't badgering him, Samantha could be a lot of fun, and the intimacy was great. But slowly he began to grow tired of her attempts to push him into something he knew he wasn't ready for. He liked her a lot. He knew that for certain. But it wasn't love, and he felt guilty that he couldn't give her what she deserved when he still loved his former wife. There it is. It was then that he realized it. He wasn't considering his feelings for his ex-wife in the past tense, but in the present, and he knew from that moment that he could never move on until he dealt with them. His mom was right. Kathy was right. He would need to forgive and forget before he could get on with his life, but he wasn't sure that he could. Unfortunately, Samantha chose to press him for more of a commitment while he was still dealing with the recent revelations about his feelings. They had gone to dinner, much like they did most Saturday evenings, and Dean had every expectation of going back to her place for a night of passion. Everything seemed to be perfectly normal, and they ate their meal, discussing work and what they might do the next day until, swallowing her last mouthful, Samantha put down her knife and fork.
Dean, where are we?
What do you mean, where are we? We're in Mariano's.
No, silly. I meant me and you. Where are we with our relationship?
We're here, enjoying each other and keeping it fun.
I want more than to just have fun, Dean. I'm not getting any younger and I want a husband, a couple of children, the whole package.
Okay, just to be clear, what do you want from me, Samantha?
A ring, preferably a diamond one.
Samantha, you're a great woman, but I don't want to get married again. At least not for the foreseeable future.
Will you take me home, please?
When Dean had paid the bill, they left the restaurant and drove back to her house in silence. Samantha waited until he had parked and then released her seatbelt and turned to him.
Goodbye, Dean. I hope you find what you want, but it obviously isn't me.
Samantha.
Samantha. That's all you have to say.
He couldn't muster up the strength to offer a response, and with that, Samantha was gone from his car and his life. The question of his feelings for Angie were foremost in his mind, and he wondered how to deal with the fact he was still in love with his ex-wife. It had been 18 months since their divorce had been finalized, and he hadn't had any contact with her. He didn't even know where she was living now. Was she still living in their old flat? Was she still sleeping with Daniel Sampson? Had she met someone and remarried? There were dozens of questions filling his head that he had no answers to, and he wasn't even sure that he wanted to have them. Going back into the office on Monday, he was very surprised to find that she hadn't canceled her contract with him, although he was grateful that she appointed a project manager to work with him in place of her. Finishing up a busy week at 6 o'clock on Friday, and with nothing else to do, he decided to have a drink or two before heading home. In the back of his mind, he thought that he might even get lucky and find someone to take his mind off of his ex-wife and off of his breakup with Samantha. The bar was fairly empty when he walked in, which, considering the mood he was in, was probably a good thing. Choosing a vacant stool at the end of the bar with no one near it, he sat down and ordered himself a bourbon. Staring at nothing, he was lost in his thoughts and was barely aware of a figure sliding onto the seat next to him.
Hello, Dean. How are you?
Turning around, he found himself staring at Margaret Whitfield, his former mother-in-law. Margaret, what are you doing here?
Looking for you, actually.
Why? Is Angie all right?
I just wanted to talk to you. If you don't mind, that is.
No, I guess that'll be okay. You go ahead.
It's about Angie.
What about her?
Dean, I'm her mother, and I'm worried about her.
Did she send you?
No, she'd have a fit if she knew I was here, talking to you. She's lost, Dean. Totally lost. I thought she'd get over it after a while, but the divorce, losing you, it's destroyed her completely. She's so unhappy, and I don't know what to do.
What do you want from me? She brought this on herself when she started sleeping with Daniel Sampson.
I know she did, and I told her that. But did you know that he coerced her and she only took that job with him for you?
For me? She never told me that.
You were struggling to get your business off the ground, and she wanted to support you. Then when Sampson found out why she had accepted the position, he threatened to terminate her, saying he would just find her probationary period unsatisfactory if she didn't sleep with him.
Dean sat back, trying to take in everything his former mother-in-law had just told him, his mind whirling with the answers it gave him and all the new questions it provoked. So, what do you want from me?
Could you talk to her, Dean? To make peace and see if she can find some closure so she can move on with her life. She's really depressed, and I'm worried she's going to do something stupid.
I don't know. She really hurt me, Margaret.
Please, Dean. Just come to the house and talk to her. Please.
She's back living with you.
Yes, she has been with us ever since you left. She quit her job at Brownstone and Sampson the day you walked out and gave up the house to move back in with us. She didn't go out of the house for 3 months and cried herself to sleep every night. For the last 6 months she's been working in a coffee shop, but that's about all she does.
Is she seeing anyone?
Look, Dean, I don't agree with what she did to you. I only came to tell you what I know and ask you to help. You really need to talk to her to get the answers you want.
As much as he wanted to say no, he knew he had to talk to Angie, to try to get some closure for himself as much as for her. Margaret, when should I come by?
Tomorrow morning would be good if you can make it. I think she's working the early shift at the cafe, so she should be home by 11.
Okay, I'll be there.
Thank you.
She got up off her stool and kissed him on the cheek before she left. After she had gone, he sat and finished his drink, ordering another, as he reflected on what he had just committed himself to. Dean hadn't slept well and was up early the next morning. The thought of seeing his ex-wife for the first time in more than 18 months playing heavily on his mind. Now he was regretting agreeing to talk to Angie, and he sat and wondered just how he was going to feel. He had survived the last year and a half by keeping his feelings for her suppressed, but he wasn't certain that he could continue to do that when he came face to face with her. It was a few minutes to 11 when Dean eventually stood outside the Whitfield house, pausing to take a breath and compose himself before ringing the bell.
Dean. Hi, come on in. Angie isn't here at the moment. She phoned to say she was staying on to cover for a while, as someone was running late.
All right, it's not a problem. I can come back later.
Nonsense.
You're here now, let me make you a cup of coffee. She won't be long, I'm sure.
Does Angie know that I'm coming? He asked when she returned with 2 cups.
No, she'd have a fit if she knew I'd been to see you.
I can imagine. They sat chatting for another half an hour before they heard the front door open.
Hi, Mom.
His heart almost stopped at the sound of the familiar voice that called from the hallway.
Sorry I'm late.
Angie stopped and stood open-mouthed in the doorway, seeing the love of her life sitting on her mother's sofa. She lost the power of speech for a moment. Hi. Dean smiled and stood up. His stomach was in knots.
Dean. What are you doing here?
Dean came to see you.
I don't understand. What's going on?
I asked Dean to come and talk to you, to try to help you sort things out.
But why? We're divorced.
Sit down, and I'll make you both a cup of coffee.
Dean finally spoke. Hello, Angie. It's been a long time. How are you?
As okay as I can be, I guess. How about you? I hear your business has really taken off.
I'm pretty good, thanks. And yeah, it has.
I'm glad. You deserve it.
You're working in a coffee shop.
Yay, it keeps me busy.
Do you enjoy it?
It's okay. I like dealing with the customers, and there's no pressure.
Dean nodded, unsure what else he could say. Finally, she got up the nerve to ask.
Are you seeing anyone?
I was, but it wasn't going anywhere, so we broke up. What about you?
Oh, I'm sorry. No, I haven't been on a date since we split up.
What happened to Daniel? Didn't he want you once you were available as a single woman?
Oh, he wanted me. He even offered to leave his wife for me, but the problem was I didn't want him. I never really did.
It didn't seem like it at the time.
Okay, I made a big mistake. But I quit my job when I knew you weren't coming back, and I never saw him again after that, even though he kept trying to contact me.
Sorry, I shouldn't have brought up the past. It's over and done with. Why did you do it, Angie? Did you love him? Wasn't I enough for you?
I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. It's all my fault.
Angie broke down and started to cry.
If I could go back and change things, I would.
I'm sorry too, he whispered as he gathered her in his arms. Eventually her sobbing slowed to a sniffle, and, wiping her eyes, she sat up and looked at him.
I never loved him. It was only ever you. You're the only man I ever loved.
So, what did you do it for?
The job was too much for me. Daniel told me I was going to fail my probationary period, and he was going to get rid of me if I didn't sleep with him.
That's no reason. You could have simply walked away.
But you just started out on your own, and I'd taken that job to keep us afloat. I knew how much you were putting into the business, and I thought it would just be the once.
But he wanted more. She nodded.
Yes, and I liked it. I liked how he made me feel when he mountain-topped me. You've always satisfied me. It was just exciting, the danger,
The what? The fact you were cheating on your wedding vows? Her body shook with another bout of sobbing.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Please, Dean. I'm so sorry for everything. I love you.
Stunned at her last 3 words, he took her in his arms again, holding her against him, until she was able to compose herself and had stopped crying. Could he forgive and forget? Those 3 words raised one very important question for him. His mom had told him months ago that he wouldn't be able to move on with his life until he did. Then Kathy had told him she knew that he still loved her, and, even more recently, he hadn't been able to commit to Samantha because of his feelings for his former wife. But could he really try again? Wiping her wet cheeks, Angie looked at him.
I'm really sorry, Dean. I really am. I have no excuses, and I would do absolutely anything to go back to how we were.
For a long moment he gazed into her eyes, remembering how they met and all the good times they had had. Then, as his emotions started to swamp him, he suddenly panicked. His heart started to race and he struggled to breathe. I need to go. I'll see you around, Angie. Getting up, he started for the door.
Do you have to?
She followed him, her eyes pleading.
You can stay for lunch if you want.
Yes, I would, but I have some stuff to do and
I understand. Maybe you could come to the coffee shop sometime.
Yeah, sure, I'll do that. Dean almost ran out of the house, his heart continuing to pound frantically while his stomach tightened into a hard lump. His relief at being outside and away from her palpable as he tried to collect his thoughts. The rest of his weekend was spent in a state of utter turmoil while he struggled with his emotions. He had deep feelings for Angie, that much was crystal clear to him, but he had no idea what he was going to do about them. Could he forgive her and forget what had happened? If, and it was a big if, could he ever trust her again? He was still pondering what he should do when he went into work on the Monday morning.
Good weekend? Kathy asked as he came in through the door.
Not especially. I went to see Angie.
Oh, and
Now I'm in even more of a mess than I was.
why? What happened?
Dean shrugged. I'm not sure. Apparently she's been a total mess since we split up, at least according to her mother. And then she told me she still loved me.
That's great, isn't it? She loves you, and you love her.
I don't know, he answered miserably. I'm torn over what I should do.
Follow your heart. That's the only advice I can give you.
For the next few days, Dean wrestled with the predicament he found himself in. Should he contact Angie again or just stay away? Eventually it was Kathy who made up his mind for him. When he came into the office on Thursday morning, she asked,
Have you been to see her again?
Nope. I still don't know what I should do.
Follow your heart. I told you. If you love her, and I think you do, then give yourself a chance.
Okay, I love her, but what if it all goes wrong? He still procrastinated.
Life's full of what ifs. What if it goes right though, Dean?
It was an hour later that he found himself standing outside of the small coffee shop where his ex-wife worked. Stepping inside, he noticed how inviting the place was. Unlike the big coffee shop chains, this store was warm, quaint, and intimate. He immediately spotted Angie at the counter, leaning on her elbows and smiling warmly at the man in front of her. It was clear she knew him by the way she held his hand and the way they were chatting it up. Then, as if that wasn't enough, she leaned forward and hugged him before kissing him on the cheek. For a few seconds he simply stood and stared at the two of them before Angie released her hold on the man and looked up, her eyes meeting his. Seeing her gazing back at him broke the spell he had been under, and without a word he turned and left, pulling the door closed as he left. He hadn't gone more than a dozen yards along the street when he heard her voice calling out from behind him.
Dean, stop. Please wait, please.
Pausing until she caught up with him, he tried to keep his feelings under control. Hello, Angie.
You came. I'd given up hope you would.
Looks like I shouldn't have.
Why? Why did you leave so soon?
You seemed rather busy, and I didn't want to interrupt.
What? You mean Henry? He's Tanya's husband. He had just come into the shop to tell me she'd had their baby last night.
I thought you and he.
Oh my God. You were jealous. You thought I had a boyfriend and you were jealous.
Her face broke into a broad smile. I guess I was. Angie took his arm and started to lead him back towards the cafe.
Come back inside. I'm about to take my break. Stay and have a cup of coffee with me.
He allowed her to lead him back into the coffee shop. 5 minutes later, she placed a latte and a cappuccino on the table and sat down.
I was beginning to think you weren't going to come back.
I have to admit I thought about it for a long time.
So why did you?
Honestly, I'm not sure, but after what you said to me at the weekend, I decided I have to give us a chance.
Really? You're not just saying it.
I still love you, Angie. I just need to find out if I can forgive and forget.
I'm so sorry for everything. I'll do anything you want. Sign anything. I just want us back together. If you can forgive me over time, I promise I'll help you forget.
I just need some time. If we can go slowly, then maybe.
We can go as slow as you want. I love you, Dean. I never stopped, and I want you back.
And Daniel, and your old job.
I don't want that life again. I'm happy here doing this and maybe, just maybe, being with you.
Dean smiled and finished his coffee. I need to get back to work, but would you have dinner with me Saturday night? Angie's eyes widened.
Yes. If you're sure, I'd love to.
Okay, I'll pick you up at 7. Getting up, she smiled a little shyly and showed him to the door, leaning up to kiss him on the cheek before he left. Waiting for Saturday to come, he thought about what he was doing. 1 minute he was going, and then 10 minutes later he wanted to call the date off. During one of his own moments, he booked a romantic little Italian restaurant and then spent an hour on Saturday afternoon getting ready. It was a few minutes before 7 when he stood outside the Whitfield house, still unsure about what he was doing. Angie opened the front door, with a huge smile on her face, seconds after he knocked.
You were early.
Taken by surprise, he simply stood and gawked at her. Her hair was down her neck like he liked it. The tight black dress she was wearing clung to her figure, while the neckline dipped to show just the right amount of cleavage. Angie, you look stunning.
Thank you. Shall we go?
Sure.
Where are we going?
It's a surprise. Arriving at the restaurant, they were shown to a table toward the back and, after ordering drinks, started to peruse the menu. You do still like Italian, don't you? He had a sudden moment of panic.
Yes. It's still my favorite.
The meal was delicious, the wine practically perfect, and after dessert, they sat back with coffee.
Thank you. That was lovely. I never thought we would ever sit down to dinner together again.
Me neither. For a minute they sat quietly, both of them reflecting on the situation they found themselves in. Eventually he interrupted the silence. I suppose I should take you home.
You don't have to. I mean, Mom and Dad aren't necessarily expecting me home tonight.
Angie murmured softly as she began to blush. Dean stared at her, his pulse rate jumping in a second at what she was suggesting.
I'm sorry. I know you want to go slowly. I shouldn't have.
She continued, her expression changing to one of alarm. What? No, it's okay. I was just, taken by surprise.
No, it's my fault. I shouldn't have suggested.
He cut her off mid-sentence. Do you want to come back to my place?
Yes, I think I do. I've missed you for too long, and I want you back in my life.
Get the check. She reached across the table and took hold of his hand, her voice soft but firm.
I want you.
Half an hour later, Dean opened the door to his bachelor apartment and invited his ex-wife inside. Standing in the living area, she looked around at the bland interior.
It's nice,
she started to say before her words were interrupted when he pulled her into his arms, his mouth descending on hers as he kissed her.
Hello, Dean.
And she pulled her lips away for a moment and sighed as she looked into his eyes. Her arms wrapped around his neck while her body pressed against his. The immediate flush of warmth in her members was clear evidence of her desire for him. He kissed her again, his tongue darting between her lips to play against hers. Stumbling towards the bedroom, they continued kissing as she unbuttoned his shirt, pushing it off his arms while he stepped out of his pants, kicking them aside. Falling back onto the bed, she wrapped one arm around him while her other hand reached for him. They were going crazy. Neither Dean nor Angie ever thought they'd be together again like this. They never thought they'd sleep together again. They never thought they'd enjoy each other like this again. Yet, here they are. After mountain-topping multiple times, they quietly held each other. Dean eventually broke the quiet. Are you okay?
I'm better than all right. I've missed you so much, and I never thought I would have a chance with you again.
I missed you too.
I know we're supposed to be going slow, but can I stay the night?
I'd like that. Dean kissed her tenderly, brushing his lips lightly against hers. The first rays of dawn were peeking through the bedroom blinds when Dean began to wonder, did I do the right thing? Where would they end up? Could he really forgive and forget? He carefully pulled himself from underneath his former wife, trying hard not to wake her. Then he slipped on his boxer shorts and a t-shirt before heading to the kitchen. He was halfway through making himself a cup of coffee when he heard her voice behind him.
Can I have one too? Unless you want to get rid of me, that is.
Nah, I think I'm stuck with you.
Really? I thought maybe after last night you might have changed your mind.
Not a chance. If you still want to try again, then. There wasn't a chance for him to finish his sentence before she flew across the room and flung herself at him, her arms and legs wrapping around his neck.
Yes, yes, yes. I love you so much.
I love you too. I always have. He pulled her against him and kissed her. Releasing his hold on her, Dean gazed into her eyes. Now about that coffee. 6 months later, Dean and Angie were remarried. He was able to forgive and forget.